Any journalists who would not join us or would not ask these questions, they may refer to us as conspiracy theorists. I have a single word for them: cowards. On January 2nd, 2008, the 9/11 commissioners wrote yet another editorial, this one in the New York Times. The title of that editorial was "Stonewalled by the CIA." What we do know is that government officials decided not to inform a lawfully constituted body created by Congress and the President to investigate one of the greatest tragedies to confront this country. We call that obstruction. What more do you need? What more do our journalists need when the commissioners themselves say they were lied to in one article, and in a self-authored editorial to the New York Times, they profess to the entire country there was obstruction? We don't know what the truth is. If that's not a principle that we could stand on as citizens to demand accountability, then I don't know what is. Obstruction, stonewalling, destruction of evidence, omissions, that's the legacy of the 9/11 Commission. Listen, I don't blame the public for being confused. A lot of confusing things happened in the wake of 9/11. Many of us were terrified for good reason. I can remember members of the mailroom in my office building being afraid to distribute the mail because anthrax had shown up in New York City. In the wake of 9/11, we saw anthrax attacks, and then the Afghanistan war, and then the sudden reports that Saddam Hussein was reconstituting nuclear weapons, and our Secretary of State warning of mushroom clouds over New York City, and then the invasion of Iraq, and then another presidential election, and then Hurricane Katrina, and then the tsunami in Indonesia, and then the collapse of the US economy, and the bankruptcy of our major investment banks, and the bankruptcy of the automotive industry, and spiraling unemployment, and now healthcare reform, and the teabaggers movement, and yeah, Iran might be getting nukes. That's some heavy shit. I don't blame the American public for being a little distracted. 9/11 kind of got swept under the carpet. Let's move on. It's part of the reason why our job is so difficult. Go up to the average person on the street and ask them if they care what happened to our air defenses on 9/11. You'll often hear, I just lost my job. My home is being foreclosed. My son is in Iraq. I've lost my medical benefits. It's legitimate, and it's hard to get past that. Doesn't help that our critics spread disinformation about 9/11 designed to make us look crazy. Yes, I said it. We are infiltrated as a movement, and we are being disrupted. Yes, many of the conspiracy theories out there are designed to discredit us. You can decide for yourselves which ones they are, but I'm not going to name any names. Anyway, in February 4th, 2002 issue of Newsweek magazine, Senator leader Tom Daschle said, "I can tell you that on January 24th and on January 28th and other dates following that, a request by Cheney and Bush not to conduct any September 11th inquiry was made." So you've got the Senate leader being told by the President and Vice President not to conduct an investigation into 9/11. New York Times issue, May 20th, 2002, headline, Cheney moves to block 9/11 probe. The Washington Post, Bush seeks to restrict Hill probes of September 11th. Again, worst terrorist attack in the history of the United States, and the Bush administration wants to block an investigation? What journalist would sit still for that? What real journalist? Let me put it that way. Not these TV journalists who show up with their cameras and have no interest in really investigating the issues that are being discussed on the stage. They're really interested in painting a picture, and they're interested in how good their hair looks on TV. Okay? What real journalists are going to sit still for something like that? Can you imagine today if there was a murder in Washington, D.C., a body was found in Washington, D.C., and the President of the United States, Barack Obama, said, "We don't want this investigated." Rush Limbaugh would lose his marbles, you know. Glenn Beck would like just start crying and roll around on the floor if that happened. We have laws in this country. Remember laws? Murders are investigated in this country. Mass murders are especially investigated in this country. Grand juries are seated. We go through we go through the discovery period where we discover evidence. People are subpoenaed. People are compelled to testify under oath. What made 9/11 different? The murder of 3,000 people. I'm not saying that they're responsible for 9/11, but certainly something failed somewhere. There's such a thing as criminal negligence. There's a whole bunch of graded reasons why we would investigate this to find out what happened, if just for the base reason that it should never happen again, and we must make sure that whatever mistakes happened, people are held accountable, and that we fix the system so that it doesn't happen again. But what is inexcusable is the administration telling us we don't want this investigated. That is criminal. I can sit here all morning and run through a laundry list of deceptions and delay tactics and disruption techniques the Bush administration employed to stop the 9/11 investigation. First off, they only funded it with $4 million. Okay, this country spent $50 million to investigate Monica Lewinsky and whether she was performing oral sex on our president. $50 million for a blowjob, $4 million for 9/11. Okay, it kind of tells you where their priorities are. You cannot make a connection between the necessity to follow the rule of law with conspiracy theories. In our system, we are all afforded the presumption of innocence, even our government, until proven guilty. The call for accountability and a thorough investigation is not the product of conspiracy theories. It is, in fact, the law. You would be hard-pressed to find one example of a murder in America where a grand jury has not been seated. Even if the ultimate conclusion of a full investigation yielded answers about negligence leading to deaths in New York City, our system will let the chips fall where they may. We don't block criminal investigations into murder. Surely the journalists among us can allow that much. Who's been held accountable in the wake of 9/11? Can we name one person who's been held accountable? Recently, Kermit A. Tyler died at the age of 96. Does anyone know who Kermit A. Tyler is? Anyone? Okay, we have a young audience. Kermit A. Tyler was an Air Force first lieutenant on duty on the morning of December 7th, 1941, Pearl Harbor, when a radar operator on the northern tip of the island reported that he and another private were seeing an unusually large blip on their radar screen, indicating a large number of aircraft about 132 miles away, fast approaching. Kermit A. Tyler went down in historical infamy for saying, "Don't worry about it." And they basically ignored this radar anomaly. Tyler carried that mistake to his grave. It's a sad story, but the public had a right to ask what went wrong and who was to blame. That's why we know his name. Tyler was never held criminally liable for his negligence. It was human error. We understand that. But in America, we have a right to know the truth. We need to know who was negligent, at least the America I want to live in. To those among us who consider us conspiracy theorists, what America do you want to live in? An America where we don't investigate murders? Former Senator Gary Hart observed that in terms of accountability, I think this is one of the great mysteries of the last 3 or 4 years. 3,000 Americans died 3 years ago, and no one lost his job or her job over it. A president who says that he is strong, and those around him say that he is, did not fire anyone. Either he was misled, in which case somebody should have been fired, or he misled us, in which case he should be fired. Senator Charles Grassley, he's gone now. Senator Charles Grassley similarly noted that I can't think of a single person being held accountable anywhere in the government for what went on and what went wrong prior to September 11th. It seems that nobody in government makes any mistakes anymore. And this isn't just limited to 9/11. You look at the failure of the banking industry. You look at the intelligence leading to the invasion of Iraq, all the failures of, Iraq had reconstituted its nuclear weapon. It had these weapons of mass destruction, those weapons of mass destruction. No one's ever been held accountable. In fact, George Tenet was given a presidential medal for the wonderful work that he's done for this country. Think about this. Not one single individual within the CIA, FBI, or National Security Agency has been reprimanded, punished, or fired for the events of 9/11. Let me read that. Senator Mark Dayton claimed that NORAD officials lied to the American people, they lied to Congress, and they lied to your 9/11 Commission to create a false impression of incompetence, communication, and protection of the American people. Let me read that again. Listen carefully. Senator Mark Dayton claimed that NORAD officials lied to the American people,